Our first public hearing, I will actually be having to recuse myself for personal reasons on this first item. If, Ryan, you said you'd like to read that?
So we'll open our first public hearing at 7:01. Public hearing is to hear comments regarding an ordinance of the city of Manvel, Texas, amending the zoning ordinance of the city by changing the zoning classification of 1.612 acres of land located at 3806 FM 1128, Manvel, Texas, from light commercial district to heavy commercial district, providing for the amendment of the city's official zoning map, providing for severability, and providing a penalty in the amount not to exceed $2,000 for each day of violation of any provision hereof.
Typically, when we have no chair, because our chair is away and our acting chair is, unfortunately, has a conflict for this particular item, typically we'll elect somebody on a temporary thing for this item to actually be the chair, so they can actually entertain the motion and the second, lead any discussion, and then at the end confirm what the vote turned out to be. So if PD&Z would be so kind as to temporarily elect a temporary chair for this particular zoning item where we don't have a chair due to conflict and a vacancy and a vacation.
I'll make a motion to be the chair.
I was fixing to ask if you wanted it, so. I'll make the motion to elect you as the chair of that.
So vote then. All in favor?
Okay, then the chair needs to call a public hearing and ask for any comments for or against, and do that 3 times, and then close the public hearing and announce the time.
Okay, so we'll open the public hearing now at 7:03. So are there any comments for or against? First call, for or against? Any comments, second call? Yes, sir.
My name is Chad Tooman, and I own the property. I was just going to tell you a little bit about it. I guess this is the correct time to do that. We're looking to move a company in. They're called Aero Structural Services. The owner, his name is Jack Treadway. He and his family has been in this business for over 50 years. They're known in the Houston area for their aircraft metalwork, and that's their business. They were located just in the Hobby area, just off of Hobby Airport, and their landlord came in and sold the building and basically gave them a few weeks to get out, and so they came to Manvel. And so what they do is, if you have like a car and your car breaks, you take it to the shop, right? Well, an aircraft, if your aircraft is broken, you can't just wheel it over to the shop. So they use their facility to hold on to all their tools, to office, and they don't do engine work or anything like that, landing gear work, tires, nothing like that. All they do is just the metal work. It's all aluminum, typically pretty clean. Well, when they need a part or something, so they handcraft the airplane parts, the metal, and they come in and put it in. So that's the basic idea of what they do. The particular building that they're in there now just as office use only, and the particular building was annexed several years ago, and it was a industrial machine shop. It was a two building company, and they manufactured parts for Halliburton. It was Moore's Machine Shop, if you guys remember, and so they had some heavy machinery. The building's got heavy power and all that. These guys don't need any of that. They don't need any of the heavy power. What they do is very quiet, very clean. We, according to, is it the NICS or NCIS or whatever code, that it groups them in a heavy commercial, and working with Jessica. Jessica's been great. She took time to sit down with me and go over it, and Jessica, thank you for that. And so we believe that we do have the right class, although I don't think it really applies to these guys. If you guys ever go see them or visit them, you'll see that there's no big equipment or anything like that. I did get a letter of support. If you're okay, can I hand this to you and you pass it down? So what I'm handing you is the letter of support. Next door, which is also my building, is Odyssey Cheer. They wrote a letter of support. They work well with Odyssey Cheer because their hours are alternate. So as they're more of an evening thing, and Aerostructural is more of a day thing. They come in, they're out, then they don't conflict with the traffic, and so they've been a good partnership. They worked well together. Wanted to make that point. So since they do work with aviation and aircraft, they are regulated by the FAA. The FAA does come in and inspect the facility and take care of it. Everything they do is inside. They don't typically store anything outside or anything like that. So they're pretty clean. And surrounding, I think you'll see in the packet, we're kind of on our own little island over there. There's the city limits. And so the three businesses would be Aerostructural, Odyssey Cheer, and then John's Countryette, which is the convenience store. And those guys actually reached out to me when they got the letter. They're in support as well. So I don't think there's anybody opposing. I didn't hear anybody. Next door, which is not in the city limits, there is a house, and next to that house is a big barn. And in that barn, outside the barn, they have a big car lift, and they do car repair, and they run a plumbing company out of that as well. So, I mean, they are metal buildings, but I think, they're well kept, and I think we take care of them, and I don't see any conflict. I don't really know what else. I just wanted to kind of give you a basic background of the buildings and what Aerostructural does, and just give you a good idea. And, certainly open to any questions.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
Well, this is actually for the public hearing. The questions can be during the actual
I'm
item
sorry,
that's
yes.
on the regular agenda, but since it's on the agenda, we could hear from them now or hear from them then. That's not a problem. But when it comes to the question and further discussion, we'd probably wait till discussion time.
And third call for public comments. Yes, sir. If you'll just give us your name and address.
Yes, I'm Kerry Perrin. I'm actually the president and CEO of the Alva Manvel Chamber of Commerce. Coming on behalf of Aerostructural, I met with them when they found out that they were out of code and were very concerned with everything that was looming on them. And so just wanted to let you know I did some research on this company just to find out how reputable they were, if it's a good business to have in the area, as that's what our Chamber of Commerce does, is we represent good businesses in our communities that are good for our communities. And it turns out I just happen to have two friends who work in the private jet industry over at Hobby. And I asked both of them, different companies, and they have major clients, like owners of professional sports teams in Houston clients. And I asked them if they had heard of this business, because, I don't know if they're being forced out because they're a bad business to have, or if they're truly what their word says they were. And both men that I talked to over at Hobby had nothing but rave reviews for this company. And what they do is just small body repair on private jets. And I took a tour of the facility to see what they meant by that. The facility itself is not big enough to bring in a full jet, just so you know. You actually have to bring in the part that needs the repair. And if it's anything bigger than that, they actually go to where the jet is. So that I thought was very comforting to know that if anything major needed to be done, it wouldn't be coming to that property. But anyway, both companies over at Javi had really high praises for this small business. And the more I talked to them, the more I realized this is a good business to have. I think it would be a good addition to our business community. And, you know, I told them, hey, when it's time for lunch, you don't go north to Pearland for lunch. You got to come down here and bring your dollars here because that's what we're about. So they've said they'll go to Bighorn and Corey's all week long if that gets you anywhere. So anyway, all that to say, I was real impressed with everything that I found out about them. I think they're a very good, trustworthy company. The men who run it seem very sharp and very trustworthy. So I just wanted to let you know that feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. Were there any other comments? We'll close the public hearing then at 7:12 p.m.
All right, thank you, Ryan. We will move on to public hearing number 2. To hear comments regarding an ordinance of the City of Manvel, Texas, finding and determining that public convenience and necessity no longer require the continued existence of city right-of-way being an unimproved portion of Bissell Road, 50-foot wide, 2.713 acre tract of land in the HT and BRR County Survey, Section 62, Abstract Number 484, Brazoria County, Texas, vacating, abandoning, and closing said public right-of-way, authorizing the mayor to execute and the city secretary to attest respectively quitclaim deeds, conveying respective interests in said abandoned right-of-way to the abutting property owners, providing for severability, and containing other provisions relating to the subject. We have any comments for our public hearing? First call? Nope. Second call for public hearing? And third call? And we will close out the second public hearing at 7:13. And then I guess that's you again.
So moving to our regular agenda then for, sorry, Bobby, a question. Did we need to read that letter from, that he provided to us into? So we're just reading the agenda item, right? Okay. Consideration and possible action to approve and forward with recommendation to City Council Ordinance 2021-0-36, an ordinance of the City of Manvel, Texas, amending the zoning ordinance of the city by changing the zoning classification of 1.612 acres of land located at 3806 FM 1128, Manvel, Texas, from light commercial to heavy commercial district, providing for the amendments of the city's official zoning map, providing for severability, and providing a penalty in amount not to exceed $2,000 for each day of violation of any provision hereof. And Jessica, I guess, do you want to open?
So, Kwasi, our city planner, is going to give you a short presentation. After that time, if you have any questions of staff or the property owner who's here, I'm more than happy to answer questions you have.
Sorry for the delay here. Yeah. Yeah. Commissioners and directors, thank you very much for our presentation on the zoning change for 3806 FM 1128 Masters Road, which was a request from light commercial LC to heavy commercial. And as we've heard from the applicant, staff did a thorough analysis based on the findings of fact and also based on the comprehensive plan and also the zoning ordinance. We've heard already, from sideline investments, the site is just 1.6 acres. The zone is from LC to HC. And in our analysis, visiting the site on several times, looking at the existing property and looking at the surrounding uses and the surrounding activities, we kept on looking how best maybe we can come out with some very factual facts and present it to you all to make a decision. You notice that there are two uses on the site. As I've said already, there's the sideline investment, the aero activity, and also the dance studio. And what we tried to find out was how compatible are these uses with the comprehensive plan in one way or the other. Just as I said already, the applicant has already stated in terms of the surrounding property uses and then the land uses, the gas station, the country grocery store, and other use of the city of bordering the city of Pella nearby. As the applicant is requesting for the approval of this repair, maintenance, aircraft pass, and others, we also did our background check in looking at aero repair activities. Now they have an office, and no one knows in terms of any other small welding activities that they might be undertaking. So we classified it under the NAIC code as the applicant discussed with our director, and then went on to just to do our fact find. You see that you all know the site, the two uses on the property, the dance studio and then the aero site. Mm-hmm. When you look at the zoning ordinance, the NAIC code permits heavy commercial on the site, on the aero activity itself. Its consistency with the comprehensive plan, in reality, is not consistent with the visions and goals of the 2015 comprehensive plan. The visions and goals on the comprehensive plan are somehow a little bit limited, but we went by finding of fact to see whether this kind of activity is in consonance with the comprehensive plan as such. And we went ahead to do a little bit of analysis in terms of parking and circulation. The aero site hasn't got much any other problem. The site that we look on the dance studio, depending upon the time, depending upon the activity, whether it's for the children or whether it's for any other youth or whether it's for any other age group, and also depending upon the traffic that might come in, there is the possibility to maximize in terms of the traffic turns and circulation that might create vehicular conflicts in one way or the other. In terms of noise, we didn't see much noise at that time, but it gives much room. As I kept on, I let staff kept on looking at the site. When is the dance studio activity? When are they at 2 p.m., at 5 p.m., at 7 p.m., and several other times? So it tended to vary. And it gives that there's a probability in terms of times whereby there might be some noise either coming from patrons or either coming from other activities. There was also the compatibility of the site design, which we found it was okay. And then also, there wasn't any much issue with loading and adequacy as such. So far as public health and safety concerned, we did not find as much any issue or criteria, but our main concern was, is this really in conformance with the comprehensive plan? And then secondly, what happens if this is given a heavy commercial zoning? It throws the dance studio into a special use permit, so, which makes a conflict of use in one way or the other. And as a finding of fact, that is an issue that we'll have to just, the applicant will have to discuss in terms of resolving. Because if we look at the NEIC and look at the heavy commercial, the dance studio and its activities, they will have to apply for a special use permit, which tends to negate a number of things that we are doing for the whole site, made up of the aero site and also the dance studio site. So there's not that uniformity that from planning principles, you can easily say all of them can be placed under heavy commercial. So in summary, the request does not really promote the land use policies of the comprehensive plan, and safety, parking, and security factors that may affect it during when the cheer company, the dance company, is at the maximum capacity. And staff, in looking at this and looking at what will happen to the dance studio, because if you look at the site in totality, not only the aero site, the dance cheer company site, it throws it into an SUP, so you cannot, as a finding of fact, classify the whole area as a heavy commercial. So because of that, staff does not recommend approval of the proposed rezoning from light commercial zoning district to heavy commercial zoning district to our commissioners. So that's what I have.
Thank you.
Just to add on to the presentation that Quasi just did, there were a few things that came up during the public hearing about the classification use, with that being NAI CS 488190. Through the public hearing process, it seemed a little bit that there may have been some question that might not be the right classification, or it's a quote unquote clean use. The number was verified because every business gets NAICS number with the Department of Labor. I did confirm that was a correct classification, and that's the number that they're using for their statistics. It was talked about that there'd be just light, I guess, welding and painting that would be on the site. Staff understands that very much. What we want to look at here is the totality of the zoning change from light commercial to heavy commercial. So while this use may be, this business may be less intense than anything that's allowed in heavy commercial, it's zoning. So at the end of the day, we've got some uses in here, as like paper manufacturing or furniture manufacturing that would outright be permitted uses. So if this business were to go away or ownership or anything sort of changes hands, with the heavy commercial zoning, it's a form that's applied for through the permit department, and we go ahead and if it's got that P in the zoning ordinance land use table, we go ahead and we sign that paperwork and change the occupancy on it. So I just wanted you all to sort of be aware of the totality of what's with heavy commercial. Talking about the dance studio, as Quasi mentioned, by reclassifying the property to heavy commercial from light commercial, we now have the dance studio who's in a legal non-conforming use. So they're allowed to stay in there. They just can't expand that use. We've talked about it with the owner that if they did have the heavy commercial classification, that would be a possibility of having to come back and ask for a special use permit so we could get the cheer company into conformity with it. So as I discussed sort of with the owner with it, to allow one use there, you create another problem, and vice versa, since we kind of can't get on the same page with that. So those are some of the things that I wanted to bring to your attention. Right now, they are permitted only for the office use itself. So there's no welding or there's no painting, that's there. They moved in and didn't call the city to anything. So the onus really got put on the city for them not calling and finding out if the use was permitted, for staff to sort of find a creative way to get them to stay there without proceeding with notice of violation against the zoning ordinance. So this is where we've come, and this is a solution that the owner brought to us. So with that said, as Quasi mentioned, it's not in conformance with the comprehensive plan. It's also not in conformance with the surrounding land uses for heavy commercial. So staff isn't recommending the zoning change to you.
Thank you. Does anybody have questions up here?
So this is one tract. Both,
It is.
okay, I misread that then on my lookup of it. That's why I wanted to make sure. My other thing is, and Bobby even goes back to years being on this committee, that opens the door to spot zoning on this because of the way it's laid out. I don't see anything around that. But that's beside the point.
It's hard because if some of the surrounding properties in the ETJ, which is not zoned,
Yes, so that's why I
their
said
argument
it's
kind of
a
says
tricky.
it's not really a conflict with the neighboring zoning if there is no neighboring zoning on certain sides. Is the argument.
So there's really no way around this.
It's an
Unless you
island with,
replat
it's
it.
an island of city
Yeah.
limit property at the
Yeah.
very tip top of our jurisdiction.
I mean, you replat it would be the only way to fix it, and then specific use on the other one.
And that conversation did come up about separating the two, but with it being one property owner, do you really want to, for him, did he really want to sort of break up the development site? Because right now the uses can share parking. Again, it's a,
Yeah, that's why I was wondering, okay.
And I have a question for you, Jessica. So we didn't really take into account the stuff that's in Pearland and outside the ETJ because that's not ours. But if I recall correctly from a few months back when we were talking about the Houston Nursery plot there on 288, they applied for heavy commercial, and we approved light commercial because heavy commercial, they could do growing operations. That was kind of the big difference, right? Not just a nursery, but growing operations and stuff.
it was one of those things that I'm not even entirely sure why the applicant had requested the heavy commercial, because they were allowed to do it in light commercial. And staff made that recommendation, again, for not the heavy commercial because of how big that the door opened for that. And since the use was permitted, there was no need to go heavier, with the ask. I never did get a reason why they asked that question.
But if they wanted to do like actually growing the plants and all that stuff, they would have had to go up to the heavy.
Yeah, because it was more or less like I think it was maybe more or less of like a tree form. I think it was, instead of just a,
Because like the nursery
Also
across the
nursery.
street, I know they grow all their own stuff and everything there. So that would most likely be a heavy commercial if it had to be zoned. Is-
I haven't
Sound
done,
right.
yeah, I haven't done much into that one, and it's in Pearland. I'm not even sure if that's Pearland's ETJ or if it's their city limits, on that side, so.
Does anybody else have any questions?
I guess so this piece, like you said, it's like this little island, right? So like, I know we want to be careful not, when you make these decisions, because you don't want to set a precedence, that's broad. But, I mean, this little piece right here, I mean, I don't really know how that works, but is there any way for them to coexist, I guess is the question, for both of these companies? Because, I mean, from what I'm understanding is if you zone it heavy commercial, then it causes a problem for the cheer company, right?
Yes, that's.
What is the solution for the owner if he wants to do both? What's the solution for them to coexist? Sure.
Reason for the heavy commercial is to get an aerostructural in there. I believe in the totality of, and the plan for the whole city. If there was a specific use that we could get them in, I would have asked for that. I know you can't, I'm pretty sure you can't attach this, but in dealing with the comprehensive plan and trying to work with the city and continue the city's view, I'll put it on public that if you guys want me to come back and 2 months after we get their aerostructural's occupancy, if we can get them in there, I'll turn it back into light commercial. The only reason I'm here is to get this company here. So that will put you right back where, now it's back light commercial. You don't have to worry about some big, heavy stuff coming in or anything like. So the sole reason is to get this company here. That would be a good plan. We did discuss with Jessica doing the special use permit that would bring them in compliance. And I think we discussed, should we do it all at the same time? And then I think Jessica decided it'd be better if we did it separately. So I would have brought that to you as well. Again, we're not trying to move any big, heavy equipment in or anything like that. And these guys, like I said, and Jessica's completely right about their code, because we looked at it and we drilled it. She spent a lot of time on this. And again, thanks again. And but even though it's all paperwork. I mean, it's what it is, red tape. So.
And did I understand you correctly, Jessica? But you said that by zoning it heavy commercial, that would allow Aero to go in, but it wouldn't necessarily, affect the cheer company right away. Only if they wanted to change, add on, change something like that.
The heavy commercial zoning would create the cheer company being a legal non-conforming use. So they're allowed to exist as they are. If the use were to go away for 6 months, then it cannot come back because it's legal non-conforming. And then they're also not allowed to expand in any manner. So if, you wanted to, add like another 2,000 square feet to the building, that wouldn't be possible. So I just wanted to caution, with that is to solve one problem, we create another problem to make it work. And there have been other, zoning things that have been brought before you where we're always trying to solve a problem, and sometimes we, the thing is we create another problem sometimes with it. And I've discussed that with you all as a commission before. That should be telling you something, that if it, if we're having that much of a discussion of maybe if it's not working, then I don't know what your recommendation needs to be to city council. But staff's gone through a lot of time and effort to go through it, to come up with a sound recommendation that goes by city's comp plan, and then also, tools that we've used in the rules and regulations that are adopted by the city. So.
Thank you.
So how long has it been? It was an auto shop repair before?
So it was a machine shop prior, years ago, and that fell out. It was legal non-conforming, and that fell out of compliance because the use went away. I know that since I've been here, we've had some businesses that recently, before that, we had a trucking business that he was just officing out of. He wasn't actually doing anything else, and that had been permitted for occupancy. And we've gotten other phone calls where we've had some automotive use that was interested in it. Unfortunately, those people who were wanting to lease never really sort of went through the specific use permit process. But there are some uses that fit in there, and sometimes because of the nature of the building and how Chad described it was a machine shop, the building sort of lends itself to more of a heavier use of people that are looking to use it. So sometimes we'll get phone calls and it's a specific use permit that we have to do there. Unfortunately, like I said, no one's ever really kind of followed through to do something there. But we did have that one gentleman that was, we did the occupancy change but it was the same situation. If he was wanting to run the trucking business out of it, it was, again, going to require some sort of zoning change, but he was only there to office.
So how long has there been so was that when it was the machine shop that would have required heavy commercial, but it wasn't annexed at that point? Is that what you're saying?
I know it went out of use for more than 6 months. So I believe when it was annexed into the city, it was legal non-conforming, and it's been years since the machine shop has been there. I don't think the machine shop was there in the last 3 years. I don't think. I don't know. Chad could probably give you a lot more insight on the business.
Yeah, the machine shop moved out about 2 years, but to be honest with you, they they basically lost their business. I think they made parts for like Halliburton or something. And then I think they sat there and waited, are they gonna, go back into production or not? And then so they just basically stored their equipment. And then they moved all of their equipment out of the big building into this little building, and it held all of their machine equipment. And I think they moved out about 2 years ago.
Okay.
So,
So that's why it's a problem, right? Because it went without, had there not been a lapse, then that wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, so when we have a legal non-conforming use, that use, like I said, it's allowed to continue if there's any sort of expansion to that use, or the use just, it goes away, and it's 6 months that go by, then the use like ceases to exist. With the zoning being like commercial, when the zoning was adopted for this site, city council said this is going to be like commercial. So if you do have a heavy machine shop in there, the idea is that through time that use eventually goes away and then gets replaced by something that's permitted within light commercial.
That right there is my issue. Because once you turn it into heavy commercial, it's heavy commercial, which means that whole piece of property can be anything heavy commercial, as long as it fits in that. And that could be something you don't even want in
If this shop
here.
was closed down, then it's already heavy commercial, so anything could come in.
I mean, he could change his cheer camp to whatever he wanted to, and at that point, as long as it falls in heavy commercial, same as light commercial, it's already under that, so.
All right, I have a question. Is this building support this heavy commercial business? Anybody know that?
I apologize, I didn't hear you very well. Can you
Uh,
repeat the
say,
question?
Is this buildings, the facility support the business for the heavy commercial, whatever they're trying to do? Repair shop? Building by itself, because as you said, that might going to be hot work, it could be cold work, so it cannot have an open door, it has to be closed door, right? So most of the times you do those types of job, it has to be have a ventilations, and so you have a gas station within like 200 feet, I assume, next door, right? And
Okay.
yes, but this building is completely climate controlled. They do all their work inside. It's
I understand, but what happens if you do the cold work on the paint and they're going to get toxic stuff? So you have to have huge ventilations.
right. They do most of their paint and work on site. They, occasionally they do. I mean, so basically what they do is if a part of the airplane is broke, like they bring it back and they hand fabricate it or whatever. If they need to prime it or paint it, it's minimal. I think they've even looked into the codes or whatever and the amount that they spray. I mean, they're not a paint shop, so they do some prime work or something like that.
I try to understand. So it's repair shop, right? So it's going to work on the old part. So you're going to have maybe asbestos, or it could be having like an old paints, and you're going to do cold works. And
Yeah, I don't think there's any asbestos on airplanes, but I mean there is some minor amounts of paint work. In the building, they used to do coatings in that building prior when it was the machine shop. They did like Aladyne and they did some coatings in there. So there's a room in the back that has a ventilation system and like a blasting that was already pre-existing, and so they have like the air filters that come in. So it was kind of already set up for that. Again, this was a heavy commercial machine shop building before the city annexed it. And again, like I said, the idea is to get these guys in there. I'll be happy to come back and turn it back into light commercial for you.
So, Mohammed, they were in the process of building a paint booth in the building. So that's for whatever parts that were built. So we know that they're needing a booth to do painting in there. If that answers any of your questions.
No, my question was, any types. I'm just getting my own experience with the repair shop, even small boats. Even you will never see that they're doing enclosed spaces because of the toxic gases it creates from the any types of hot work or cold work. And I'm telling you, last 15 years, that's what I've been doing. And you have to have a very good ventilation system. Having a gas station next to it, having a like your nursery just across the road actually, And my question is, definitely there are some rules and regulation for that. And even you have a heavy, machine shops before, it might be not the same type of nature of business you are having right now.
Right.
It's just only my concern only, I'm not trying to be,
Yeah, yes, sir, and it's a very valid concern. It is FAA regulated, so the feds do come in, inspect the building, inspect, the FAA does, they have to go through the process of getting the building inspected with the FAA, and the FAA does check on them. So, and they look at, they look at the repairs they make, what they do, and I think a lot of paperwork, and I think they make sure that their facility is adequate as well. So aside from the city, the FAA does inspect them as well.
Thank
as long
you.
as it meets some kinds of requirements, I'm okay with this. I'm just wondering if it does meet.
If the property is rezoned to heavy commercial, the next process that we go through is another change of occupancy application would be filed that would allow it just for besides office. And at that point, once it's approved by the zoning official, then it goes to building, and it also goes to fire marshal's office for review. So if any additional fire exits or such would be needed, that's where something would come in. Or on the building side, where we're putting up a room in there for painting. Those are all things that we would need to see, but that's kind of after if you have the zoning. So, okay.
Anybody else? Do I have a motion then?
I mean, either way, somebody's gonna have to make a motion on it.
Motion from anybody?
It could be a positive and a negative at the same time. I'm waiting on the statement, but yeah. But I know you can't give it. So I can give you a motion to approve.
Okay, do I have a second? Second? All those in favor? All those opposed? So 0-5. Motion fails.
All right, item B on our regular agenda. Consideration possible action to approve and forward with recommendation to City Council Ordinance 2021-037, an ordinance of the City of Manvel, Texas, finding and determining that public convenience and necessity no longer require the continued existence of the city right-of-way, being an unimproved portion of Bissell Road, a 50-foot wide, 2.713 acre tract of land in the HT and BRR Company Survey. Section 62, abstract number 484, Brazoria County, Texas, vacating, abandoning, and closing said public right-of-way, authorizing the mayor to execute and the city secretary to attest respectively quitclaim deeds, conveying respective interests in said abandoned right-of-way to the abutting property owners, providing for severability, and containing other provisions relating to the subject. Jessica? Or...
Well, I guess we'll just kind of start. There's a couple of things that have come up. Obviously, you had a public hearing about the possible abandonment of Bissell. If you if you understand where this is the section of Bissell that is just to the west of Meridiana Parkway. There's a piece of property that I guess everybody from the city refers to as Mark Haddock's Pond. So there's a couple of detention ponds. One, I believe, that's finished with a weir, and the other one was, it was never finished. And it's adjacent to the C-12 ditch. On the north side of Bissell is the railroad tracks. So you have this piece of property that Meridiana Development owns. that is adjacent to Bissell. The request was actually to abandon the road right-of-way. The property lines go to the middle of the road. So if the city council decides to abandon the road, half of that would go to the south side, which would go to the property owner to the south, and half of it would go to the north. And one of the things Bobby found about the roadway abandonment policy, and he'll mention that as well. So there's a bit of an issue.
Well, as Kyle said, we do have an abandonment policy, which we developed several years ago because, as you know, to acquire right-of-way nowadays is difficult. It's not only expensive, it's hard to get somebody to sell property if you need a right-of-way for an easement or for a roadway, and eminent domain is not exactly very popular either. So when you have right-of-way, to release it, that right-of-way is a big issue, because if you have to buy it or get it again, it's expensive and it's difficult. So we treat these requests, we have a policy, we send it to the utility companies to see if there are utilities in the right-of-way already, or if there are plans for utilities. We refer it to the city departments for the same thing. And the whole policy, well, the first thing that we want to do is identify any and all abutting property owners, because like Kyle said, when it's abandoned, poof, it goes away, and the underlying property owners get the whole fee instead of their property encumbered by a right-of-way. So typically, you own to the middle of your street. If you own a house, you own to the middle of your street, subject to the burden to buy the public right-of-way. And if the right-of-way goes away, you get the full fee simple of your property, and the guy across the street will get to the midpoint of the roadway on his side. In most cases, there are some exceptions, but generally that's what happens. So when the property goes away, both sides will get it. Now here in this case, we've got an application from Meridiana wanting to abandon both sides, or the whole right-of-way, not only the half of the right-of-way that abuts their property, but also the half of the right-of-way that abuts BNSF's property across the street. So typically, and in our policy, we review it to quote-unquote identify any abutting or adjacent property owners that need to be included on the application. Because if it's going to affect more than one person, we want them both to apply, we want them both to want it, and we'll basically review it so that it goes away. We don't really want to easily abandon half of a roadway. It's either all or nothing, because we can't do anything with a half a roadway usually. So we want to either do nothing, or we want to go ahead and abandon the whole thing, and we want to make sure all the property owners are involved in this decision. In this case, we don't have that. We only have the application from Meridiana wanting the whole right-of-way to be abandoned, but they know that they can only get released for their one half. So at this point, and that's what we're tasked to do, is identify this. So we don't think at this point all the parties are on the application, so we're kind of not ready to move the process forward until that happens. Did I miss out anything?
Any questions?
Usually city send mails to the people around, right?
I believe that is part of the process. I don't know if Tammy, for abandonments, do we notify the property owners nearby?
I don't see anybody's here, look like anybody talked about that one, at least.
So, really, I mean, obviously, railroad company, not always the easiest group to get in touch with, you may understand. So, I mean, really, this process is, we're not in a rush to develop this track. This is kind of just forward thinking. We want to see if this is something that the city would support, whether it's worth us proceeding to try and coordinate with BNSF and get their support, get them to move forward with us on this application. So I understand if it's not, if we need to bring BNSF to this and make sure that they're, good with this as well. And we understand that they would be party to half of the right-of-way. So really, it's more, we wanted to submit this to see where, see how this kind of played out. And really just if the city was in support of abandoning this right away. Like, if it's not something the city would support, then, you know, we'll stop right now.
With all due respect, I feel like this could have been a meeting that was had by staff before bringing it to this body for a formal application for a decision, and that's what I want to say.
Fair enough. Comments accepted.
I think I could recommend that if we just table it, maybe we can have that meeting, and if the applicant gets the sense the city's not going to support it, they can withdraw their application at any time. If they do want to pursue it, we can bring it back.
It's fair enough. Can go with that.
So I'm looking for a motion then to table the item.
I'll give you a motion to table this agenda item.
I'll second.
All those in favor of the motion on the table? All those opposed? And it's unanimous. Our last item is just acceptance of the meeting minutes to date. Any questions on that or concerns with that?
See anything in it, so.
Sorry?
I didn't see anything in it that was off. That's why I was wondering if Ryan did.
Okay.
Need a motion to approve?
Yep.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor of the motion? All those opposed? And it's unanimous. And I guess we're just looking for one more motion then.
Motion to adjourn.
All those in favor? All those opposed? All right, we are adjourned.